Take your seats. Shh. If we can ask everyone to please take your seats for the moment, and then in a moment we'll rise to invite in the mourners. And if I could also ask people to please make sure your cell phones are silenced or off and away. Please rise. Can be seated. To open, we're going to listen to a beautiful, powerful song of Phil Oakes that Bert loved, called "When I'm Gone," about the purpose of life and living, and was really a theme of Bert's life.
In this world where I'll belong when I'm gone, and I won't know the right from the wrong when I'm gone, and you won't find me singing on this song when I'm gone, so I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. And I won't feel the flowing of the time when I'm gone. All the pleasures of love will not be mine when I'm gone. My pen won't pour a lyric line when I'm gone, so I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. And I won't breathe the bracing air when I'm gone, and I can't even worry about my cares when I'm gone. Won't be asked to do my share when I'm gone, so I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. And I won't be running from the rain when I'm gone, and I can't even suffer from the pain when I'm gone. Can't say who's to praise and who's to blame when I'm gone, so I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. Won't see the golden of the sun when I'm gone, and the evenings and the mornings will be one when I'm gone. Can't be singing louder than the guns while I'm gone, so I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. All my days won't be dances of delight when I'm gone, and the sands will be shifting from my side when I'm gone. Can't add my name into the fight while I'm gone, so I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. And I won't be laughing at the lies when I'm gone, and I can't question how or when or why when I'm gone. Can't live proud enough to die when I'm gone, so I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. There's no place place in this world where I'll belong when I'm gone. And I won't know the right from the wrong when I'm gone. And you won't find me singing on this song when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it. I guess I'll have to do it. Guess I'll have to do it while I'm here.
L'kol zman ve'etin v'l'chol chefetz tachar hashamayim, a season is set for everything. A time for every experience under heaven, a time for planting and a time for reaping, a time for keeping and a time for discarding, a time for loving and a time for hating, a time for embracing and a time for refraining, a time for slaying and a time for healing, a time for laughing and a time for weeping, a time for dancing and a time for wailing, a time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time for seeking and a time for losing. We're all here because we've lost a great man, a beloved father and husband and grandfather and friend. And Bert was able to do everything in his time, all the things that Kohelet spoke of. Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God.
מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אחסר, בינות דשא ירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינעלני. נפשי ישובב, נפשי ישובב, ינחני ומעגל צדק למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגט צלמוות, לא אירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך, שבטך ומשענתך, המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן, תערוך לפני שולחן, תערוך לפני שולחן, נגד צוררי. דשנת ושמן ראשי, דשנת ושמן ראשי, דשנת ושמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני, ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
A Psalm of David. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. Makes me lie down in green pastures and leads me beside the still waters. God restores my soul and guides me in straight paths, for that is God's namesake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. Surely anyone who knew Bert knows that his cup runneth over, and today we're going to have a runneth over of speakers to speak about him and the beauty of his life. So to begin, we'll have his rabbi, the family rabbi, particularly in the Berkshires, Rabbi Bert Visotsky.
Our rabbis teach there is no higher value than the study of Torah. And yet, they make two exceptions, confirming that there are things even more essential in the hierarchy of Jewish thought. The rabbis taught that one should suspend Torah study to commemorate the dead and to celebrate marriage. Today, we commemorate the death of our friend Bert Pogrebin, even as we celebrate his marriage of 60 years to his beloved wife, Letty. They raised a family, Abby, and Bert insisted we also count Dave Shapiro here as a kid, Robin, David, and their children, the grandkids, Ben and Molly, Ethan and Maya, Zev and Arlo. Bert Pogrebin was a hero. I counted him my hero, I and so many others who admired him and sought to emulate him. He was a Harvard Law graduate and had a very successful practice, which I'll talk a bit more later. Bert was unusual, I think, in that he was such a supportive spouse to a very public and activist wife, my Rabbi, Letty. Bert worked hard as a lawyer, but it often seemed to me that he did so in order to be supportive and loving husband to Letty, in addition, of course, to his own passion for the law. That passion included his law school class's role in founding the Appleseed Network, which is supported by the Bert Pogrebin Appleseed Fund for Justice, and there is mention of it in your programs. Those of us outside the family saw Bert as the rare man willing to, if I may, lean out, to take a step back while his wife and then his children and even grandchildren claimed the limelight. Bert was blessed with a disarming sense of humor, a clear identity, and absolute comfort with who he was. Most important to him was family. They who experienced his love, his intense focus on each of them, his quiet assurance that he had their backs, he was proud of them, and that everything would be okay. Recently, even in his illness, Bert stayed in the game. The last time we spoke face-to-face earlier this month, Bert talked politics, and he made his views crystal clear. Then, of course, he joked about rabbis and finished the conversation explicitly expressing his love for family, each by name. When chatting with Bert, the fact that he was hard of hearing worked to everyone's advantage. It caused us to distill our thoughts so that we could tersely, yet loudly, express them. Bert made conversation count. My wife, Sandy, tells me that she and Bert spoke together of lawyering and firm management. As many of you know, Bert worked past the conventional retirement age, actually well past the conventional retirement age. Now, to outsiders, his choice of legal specialty sometimes seemed surprising. He was a management side labor lawyer. Yet he represented management with full awareness of labor's needs. It was our sense that he was tough, but fair, and that he was fair made him an exemplary moral practitioner. Perhaps part of the reason that Bert worked so long as a lawyer was the very simple fact that his clients didn't want to let him go. We also don't want to let him go, although we know the time has come. I want to say once more how I looked up to him as a model leader, husband, father, friend. When we think of him in the months and years ahead, we will think of Bert Pogrebin as an exemplar, a teacher, a quiet yet effective advocate, and a supporter of those he loved and cared about. His memory is a blessing, and may it remain so. Yehi Zichro Baruch.
Now we'll hear from Bert's children, and Bert and Letty's children, Abigail, Robin, David, and his child, son-in-law, David.
I'm Abby, not Robin. If any of you ever doubted the power of showing up, please take it from our family on this rainy morning. It's everything. Thank you, each and every one of you, and those on live stream. I wish someone would have told me to freeze the frame. I'm 4 years old and so excited that Dad is taking us to the bakery near our first home in Greenwich Village early Sunday morning to get oversized black and white cookies for breakfast. I'm 6, and he's belting Let My People Go at the Seder table, his booming voice trying to channel his hero, Paul Robeson. I'm 8, and he's strumming Union songs on the guitar. Pete Seeger's The Banks Were Made of Marble and Which Side Are You On? At 9, Dad is behind our salt air house with his rusty toolkit covered in grease, happily hunched over our used bicycles. God forbid we should own a new bike. The thrill for him was always in the resurrection. I'm 10 and earnestly playing him my first melodramatic composition on the guitar, and he never betrays how ridiculous my lyrics are. Sitting here in the middle of a messy room, looking around at all the clothes that are strewn. Then I think of the day I took my dope. And now I am the same name as that drug. Thank you. I'm 11, and Dad is drilling me on my fastball, urging me to recognize my raw talent at playing second base, even when the team captains don't seem to see it that way. I'm 12, and he's insisting I phone my fellow 7th grader Becky Greenberg to explain why it was patently unjust that she invited only Robin to her Halloween party, and there should be immediate redress. I'm 13, getting dressed up for the Salt Air Co-ed social at our modest little yacht club, and Dad's telling me to go muster the courage to ask Andy Goldberg and Aaron Morse for a dance, even though they're entirely focused on Denise McGowan. I'm 14, he's explaining why he went down to Alabama in his 20s to volunteer for voter registration, how he got to meet Andrew Goodman of Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney. I'm 18, and he's 16, and he's standing at the stage door of the Alvin Theater on Broadway, waiting for me to come off stage and hug me after Merrilee's final song, Our Time. He was there every night, though admittedly there were only 16 nights before Frank Rich closed the show. At 17, he suggests we take a walk when I'm having a panic attack about starting college. And he says, let's talk about what you're afraid of. I'm 27, and he's meeting my future husband, letting me know I've found one of the great ones, wrapping us in a tallis under the chuppah. I'm 33, and he's calling to let me know that he accidentally dropped 1-year-old Benjamin in the Central Park pond in the middle of December when they went exploring together. Mom reassured me that Dad rushed into the cold, shallow water to pull Ben out by his toddler parka and ran with Ben dripping in his arms back to safety. Benny. He loved you with such pure completeness. Your connection really was something to see. And he told me so many times since you started teaching 3 years ago, those students are the luckiest damn kids in New York City. I'm 34, and he's cradling tiny Molly and marveling at how that much spark and intensity could come in such a small package. Fast forward to Molly in 8th grade, when my dad is spending most of Thanksgiving weekend talking through her essay on whether the Constitution is a living document. Molly, you called to talk to Grandpa until he couldn't talk anymore. I hope you could feel how you made his heart explode. I see now, in hindsight, how it shapes and strengthens you. A father's unshakable faith and fortification. It built resilience when I stumbled or struggled or when no one was asking me to dance. He reminded Rob and David and I constantly, not just to work our hardest, but to look for the kind people. Never let others break your spirit. But the core of Dad, his greatest ardor and anchor, was Mom. Letty Joe, as he called her, but normally just Hun Bun. It's honestly near impossible to describe their romance, the unadulterated delight in each other's company, their mutual admiration, never a cruel word, never a sliver of daylight between them. And no, I didn't need to hear as many times as I did how sexy Mom was. It's nothing short of exquisite, the way you took care of Pop, especially these last months. She tracked every pill, blood pressure reading, and doctor's visit, made sure he had beautiful meals and music, warm blankets, and even the occasional sip of Tito's. They were intertwined until his last breath. I want to thank my Aunt Marcia and Kathleen Paratus, especially, who read to him when he could no longer read. Uncle Mark, who kept calling and signing off, "I love you, big brother." Dr. Michael Rosen, who was always reachable, and Dr. Dan Labo, who helped more times than we can count. His caregivers, who were so gentle and skilled, Pamela Weinberg for helping us find them. My remarkable friends, far and wide, who have carried me this week, and a particular shout out to Marnie Gutkin, who made the beautiful programs in the middle of her life, and Lisa Messenger, who fed us lunch yesterday after the burial. And to Rabbi Sol, Rabbi Bookdahl, and Rabbi Vysotsky, each of you have reminded my family of the power of a rabbi in the hardest hours. Pop, it is a well-worn cliche to say, I never thought this day would come, but I truly didn't. Somehow I assumed we'd always have another lunch date, another weekend by the fire, your voice on my voicemail. Hello, Abigail. It's your father calling. I wish you could have seen your family around you, Dad, during your last night alive on Sunday. The singing, the holding on to each other, the joking and the weeping. All that love starts with you. Thank you, Daddy.
First, I want to say thank you to all of you for making the effort to come today. I'm Robin. Many of you from great distances. Cyril from Austin, Amy and Mark from Denver, Penelope from Rhode Island, Steve and Sally from Boston, Amy from Philadelphia, Dylan from Wacabuck. I want to deeply thank you for your texts, calls, and emails of support over the last few days. They have held us up and helped us through. And I want to thank the rabbis, Bert and Angela, for schlepping to the Berkshires to lovingly lead our graveside burial service yesterday, and for their gentle shepherding of us this morning. They have both been important figures in our family, and we couldn't need them more than we do now. My dad has always brought to mind an oak tree. That is what he was in my life: solid, unshakable, protective, comforting, and constant. Grieving over these last few days, I've been flooded by sense memories. His musical favorites that were the soundtrack of my childhood: Chuck Mangione, Mozart's Eine Kleine Nacht music, Pete Seeger, Cryer and Ford, Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto, Peter, Paul and Mary, Aaron Copland's Rodeo, musicals like Fiorello, Guys and Dolls, Pacific Overtures. His voice as we sang folk songs on the guitar: Amelia Earhart, Frozen Lager, Stew Ball, For the Sake of the Children. His physical presence, always exciting as he came through the door, the dry, soft strength of his hands, his arms gently steering me on the dance floor. He taught me how to ride a bike, swing a bat, hit a tennis ball, sail a boat. He called me Rabbi Bob, read every one of my articles, and wanted to discuss them, to really engage with them. He taught me not to equate success with money. He exemplified character, decency, kindness, morality. Since he was a labor lawyer who represented management, we always said he was a good guy on the bad side. This was beautifully encapsulated by a note I received about him the other day from the writer Joe Conason, who headed the union at the Village Voice. We worked on 4 contracts together, Joe wrote, and my recollections of him and what became an oddly intimate relationship under pressure of all kinds are profoundly positive. He elevated all the discussions with his equanimity and positive attitude. The toughest and most unforgiving members of our committee could not help liking Bert. The night before I flew home from Los Angeles to be with my dying father, I attended a ballet performance and was reminded of how many audiences Dad and I sat in together, attending theater, music, and dance. But it was the unadulterated exuberance of the dancers that night that brought home the ways in which my dad was especially rare. In a world of so much angst, stress, and pain, he was unfailingly upbeat, buoyant, and positive. In a culture of striving, aspiration, and ambition, he was content with what he had: his family, his friends, his work, his home, and took pleasure in the simplest of things: a Tanglewood concert, a labor negotiation, the Times crossword, a Giants game, often watched with Robert Caro, who is here, a cup of decaf, half a grapefruit. Where life can often feel heavy, my dad somehow always brought light, and of course, his now legendary levity. I know many people in this room have memories of how much Bert made them laugh. While most of us second-guess ourselves, plagued by self-doubt and self-criticism, he had the uncomplicated courage of his convictions, confident in his views and values, comfortable with himself. He was his own true north. He was mine. He was the anchor of our family, and now we all feel unmoored. How emblematic he was of a life well lived. He loved his work and gave it everything until he was finally and very reluctantly forced to retire, adored his children and connected deeply with each of his grandchildren. Every time we talked, he asked about my kids, Ethan and Maya, living through their adventures, loving their joys, wanting so fiercely for them to be happy. More recently, he would even ask about my dog, George. How, he wanted to know, was he adjusting to Los Angeles? And of course, my mom was his everything, and they were a powerful pair. Together, they modeled for us what it means to cherish, respect, value, and prioritize your partner. And while it's well known how large she loomed for him, if my mom could stand up here today, she would tell you how huge he was for her, how he was the wind beneath her wings, and she would not have soared as high without him. My dad left it all on the field. He ends this life without unfinished business, unresolved conflicts, and I would venture to guess, without regrets. He made the most of his time on this earth. We had always been close, but over the last couple of years, as my personal life unraveled and his health declined, our connection deepened. He really wanted to know how I was doing. He made it clear that he believed in me, that there were better days ahead. Throughout my life, he has been a beacon, a ballast, and a blessing. Recently, we had stopped talking as often on the phone because it was increasingly hard for my dad to get the words out. But the last time we managed, the conversation was remarkable. "I want you to free me," he said. "You want me to let you go?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "Where do you want to go?" "Florida." "Why?" I asked. "It's warm," he said. And then, like a parting gift, he said this final heartbreaking sentence, the last words he would ever say to me: "I love you, Robin, until my last breath."
He would have, he'd have been pretty happy at this turnout. I echo my sister's deep appreciation for the support our family has been given these last few months, and especially these past few days. At 87, about 2 years ago, during his last visit to my house in Florida, my father was already feeling the effects of Parkinson's and other ailments. At one point, I helped my father into the passenger seat of my car, and once he was settled and my mother was tucked in the back seat, I got in and I asked him, "Are you comfortable?" And without missing a beat, he replied, "I make a living." Our dad had a keen, facile, and wide-ranging sense of humor. His wit was quick, sometimes dry, and generally hilarious. But it was never at the expense of others. That was not him. He was the funniest person I've known. His humor was integral to his personal life and helped in his professional life. Whether bargaining overnight with the Fulton Fish Market unions or negotiating with the County of Suffolk firefighters, his wit greased the labor law wheels. Using humor to help me through my life's challenges has been a pillar of my adulthood, and one that I owe entirely to my father. When I was a boy in Saltaire, I would be lulled to sleep by the sounds of laughter coming up from my parents' dinner party as my father told a story. My mother was recently asked what made her fall for my father, and she said, without having to think about it at all, his wit. My parents met across a volleyball court in Fire Island. He was attracted to the blonde in the yellow bikini, but he fell in love with the woman underneath. Early in their courtship on a date, my father knocked over his wine glass while telling a story and was so focused on Letty that he kept the story going with no regard for the spill. And they were married 5 months later. To say my father was devoted to my mother would be an understatement. He was interested in everything she did. He admired her intellect, was hotly attracted to her, followed her career, and supported her fully in every way, all while excelling in his own career. Whether it was reading her rough drafts in the audience at every speaking engagement, or gently pushing her back on a bicycle up the Cinque Terre, my father was my mother's chief supporter and biggest champion. To me, as a boy in the 70s and 80s, this image of devotion was the most macho a man could be. He was so at home with his masculinity that having a whip-smart, successful, and gorgeous woman as a wife was not a threat to him, but an attraction. It was an amazing example that he set for his children, and he lived it every day. Whether fighting for civil rights, marching for women's equality, lobbying the Supreme Court on behalf of a conscientious objector, or advocating for a better grade for his son in 9th grade biology, my father's sense of justice was strong. He had a deeply ingrained sense of fairness, of right and wrong. One time at my job, I had occasion to meet a lawyer who represented a municipal union on Long Island. He recognized my last name on my business card. And after learning I was Bert's son, he exclaimed, your dad is so tough, but he's fair, fair guy, good people. He's a good guy, that fair guy. As successful as he was at work, as enraptured by his wife, we children were cherished, prioritized, provided for, and intensely loved. When we were little, my father, being an early riser, was the one to dress us and corral his 3 small children before school. When I was 5, my father supported my fashion decisions without judgment. And I vividly remember him helping me dress and threading my belt through the belt loops of my favorite yellow bell-bottom corduroys. Recently, about a week ago, I helped my father get dressed. And as I was helping him with his pants, I smiled at him, remembering those morning moments when I was a child. He smiled back at me knowingly. The change in roles was not lost on him. It may sound simple, but sometimes the simplest things are true. And Dad made everything fun. Every morning, my father would make the reverse commute from our Upper West Side apartment to Mineola on Long Island, and on the way, he would take his 3 small children to school for 1st and 4th grades. We would sing, talk, or listen to news radio. When he would find a break in the traffic, my father would hit the gas and shout, "Pogrebin Express, coming through!" My father was proud but not prideful. He came to every sports game, play, musical, summer camp event, dance recital, clown show, speech, and talk. From the time we were toddlers up until a couple years ago. There was simply nothing he would rather have been doing than enjoying his family. He paid attention to all of us, was devoted to all of us, and worried about all of us. Around the dinner table, he treated us like adults from an early age. He cared about our lives, our interests, our friends, our schooling, our work, our challenges, and our loves, all the way until his final days. My father set the example for all of us. He was the standard. The cliches apply. He was a rock. He was a legend. He was compassionate and sensitive, but not a pushover. He was strong, but not obstinate. He had the truest moral compass, and everyone could set their own to his. He knew right from wrong in the most unshakable, visceral way. He made everything fun and good, and I will miss him. I love you, Dad.
Excuse me. Sausages. When I first met Bert in 1993, I got the typical parents meet boyfriend grilling. Where are you from? What do you do? Where did you go to school? Bert seemed to fixate on the where are you from. I'm from Chicago. I think of the city of big shoulders, the monsters of the Midway. Bert thought sausages. For the first 5 years of my marriage to Abby, every time I saw Bert, he greeted me in his booming voice, "Let's get some sausages." I took that as a sign of great affection. As time passed, you'll be glad to know that our relationship deepened. I learned many things about Bert over the next 30 years, but the most powerful quality was how he embodied wholeheartedly his dual role as both the behind-the-scenes supporter and cheerleader and the passionate leader in his personal and professional lives. He was first and foremost the full-throated supporter of Letty, encouraging her, pushing her, counseling her, and loving her. He was the man behind the incredibly strong woman and the quiet source of Letty's strength. But Bert was so much more than Letty's husband. He was a legendary labor lawyer, a passionate believer in justice and equality, and the foundation of his wonderful family, providing fully biased, totally uncritical, and I do mean biased and I do mean uncritical, support of his 3 children and 6 grandchildren. Each of his progeny are wonderful and accomplished, but to Bert, they were Nobel Prize winners and Cy Young Award winners. Watching the sense of outrage in Bert when one of his was slighted in any way was a sight to behold. I also had the privilege of knowing Bert in a professional capacity and was struck by how he brought the same energy, wisdom, and sense of humor to his law practice as he did to his personal life. I will never forget the way Bert would describe the other side in a negotiation. He used the same words he used to describe anyone who in any way mistreated his family or any team that was beating up on his beloved Giants. Those effing guys. I will miss you, Bert, and while it may not be the most elegant way to remember someone, I will think of you and smile every time this guy from Chicago orders a sausage.
You Pogrebin Shapiros know how to talk. It's such beautiful remembrances. Yesterday, in a picturesque village cemetery in the Berkshire Mountains, Bert's immediate family gathered under rainy skies to bury their beloved patriarch. The family held each other under a circle of umbrellas and shared memories, gratitude, and blessings, and even the angels in heaven shared their tears. In that moment, it was abundantly clear, you are Bert's animating purpose, his greatest joy, and his deepest and most enduring legacy. Letty told her family yesterday, all of whom were not present at the occasion 60 years ago, that it also rained on their wedding day. So it felt full circle, a good sign, because so many blessings flowed from that marriage. It was a reminder that at the center of Bert's beautiful legacy was a singular love story between Letty and Bert. And even if the kids think this song is a little high on the schmaltz factor, this was their love song.
Remember when you weren't there, when I didn't care for anyone but you. I swear we've been through everything there is. Can't imagine anything we've missed. Can't imagine anything the two of us can do. Through the years, you've never let me down. You've turned my life around. The sweetest days I found with you. Through the years, I've never been afraid. I've loved the life we've made, and I'm so glad I'm staying right here with you through the years. I can't remember what I used to do, who I trusted, whom I listened to before. I swear you've taught me everything I know. Can't imagine needing someone so, but through the years it seems to me I need you more and more. Through the years, through all the good and bad, I knew how much we had. I've always been so glad to be with you. Through the years, it's better every day. You've kissed my tears away, as long as it's okay. I'll stay with you through the years.
Bert and Letty have a whole community of friends, and so now we're moving into many words from their friends, beginning with the Madam Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, then Bruce Millman, Lynn Povich, and Stephen Shepard, followed by Kathleen Paradas, Marlo Thomas, Sarah, and Victor Kovner.
Oh, thank you so much for the words of Bert and Letty's children, followed by that song. It just has such an extraordinary impact as we think about and remember the life of a man who's been described, starting with the Rabbi, as a hero, as an anchor, as great, as everything that one would want in someone who has a presence that lasts now as strongly as it did when he was with you. I first met Bert and Letty many years ago at Chautauqua in Western New York. We had come from a place called Arkansas to Chautauqua. And we met these essential New Yorkers. And immediately were attracted to both of them. I had heard of Letty because of her work with Ms. and her activism and her writing and extraordinary energy about the rights and roles of women. I hadn't heard of Bert, but it quickly became clear that they were a formidable team. It became impossible in the years since to think of one without the other. I also got to meet Judy Collins there. And I will tell you, she was totally uninterested in Bill Clinton and me. She only had eyes for Letty and Bert. It was like Letty was being very nice to us and saying to Judy Collins, "This is the governor of Arkansas." And Judy goes, yeah. But I've been so pleased to see over the years the nature of that partnership between Bert and Letty. And everything you've heard about Bert, with his energy, which is always positive, with his optimism, his commitment to justice, his feeling about righting wrongs, whether they were for his children or his clients or the people that the Appleseed Network worked with. It was all of a one. He was a person who was the same. There was no pretense. There was no acting. It was Bert from start to finish. He was also that way with politics. I've had occasion to have Letty and Bert at events for political fundraisers and other campaign events. And Bert was always supportive, not as enthusiastic as Letty, I'll be honest, but always supportive. And always willing to, kind of give me an atta girl. That wasn't bad, he'd say. That was high praise. But when I heard about his passing, immediately the picture that came into my mind was him smiling, often, as I recall, in a kind of either light purple or lavender shirt. I saw that on him a lot, which I also thought was supportive of Letty, and very kind of fashion forward. But I thought of him smiling and Letty gesticulating about something that we were both passionate about, angry about, upset about. And he was there. He was there to be supportive of her, but much more and deeper, supportive of the kind of world that they both wanted for their children and their grandchildren. And we need people like Bert now more than ever. And I think as we gather to honor and remember him, it would be my hope that we would also remember the way that he supported people, defended people, and how he can be an example for us going forward when we need more heroes and anchors like him. Thornton Wilder writes in The Bridge of San Luis Rey, "There is a land of the living and a land of the dead, and the bridge is love, the only survival, the only meaning." And you had enough love from Bert to last many, many lifetimes. Godspeed.
My name is Bruce Millman. I first met Bert as a summer associate in his law firm in 1971. We practiced law together for nearly 50 years, 50 continuous years. And for 40 of those years, we had adjoining offices. He was my teacher, my mentor, colleague, a partner, and friend. He helped build my career, and he was the rock on which it stood. Aside from my father, I can't think of any man who had a greater influence on me and on my life. And for that, I'm not only grateful, but I feel blessed. So in the short time that we have today, I really cannot do justice to Bert or his career or our collective grief. A role model, funny and engaging, a lawyer with deep intellectual curiosity, imagination, and creativity, a lovely, lively, fascinating man, a gentleman, a giant. So have other lawyers described Bert to me this past week. He was a brilliant litigator, negotiator, and strategist. I left the office late one evening. Bert was sitting at his desk writing out a labor arbitration brief in longhand on a yellow piece of paper. This is well after we had computers. I suggested to him that, he could have assigned that task to an associate and he wouldn't have had to stay so late. He turned to me as if I had something wrong, that there was something wrong with me. And he said, "Don't you understand? This is what I love most." He loved arguing cases. He loved law. And he loved Little Mendelsohn, our law firm from which he retired. A professor of law at Hofstra and at NYU law schools for many years, co-author of a widely used labor law textbook, his door always open, generous in sharing his time, his unbounded wisdom, and even his clients. He was teacher and mentor to literally generations of lawyers. He had a gift for recognizing talent and developing talent. Raines and Pogrebin, his legendary small Long Island law firm, was incubator for dozens of now prominent labor and employment lawyers, management, union, employee representatives, neutrals. Nearly every lawyer at that firm earned recognition in lists like Best Lawyers in America and Super Lawyers, and that was because of Bert. With wit and incredible humor, he taught us to be tireless in ferreting out the facts in their minutest detail, to think creatively about using precedent to advance our clients' arguments, to be fearless in confronting administrative agencies, to be courteous to our adversaries, to always appreciate and respect the labor and the aspirations of working women and working men, and to be ethical in everything we do. He had, as others before me have said, an unwavering moral compass. A former union negotiator wrote to me this week, Bert was not afraid to tell his client what was the right thing to do, even if it was not popular. We learned incredible things from Bert. He was a giant. I loved him. I thought he would live forever. And through those that he tutored and engaged and taught and mentored, he will.
Good morning. For those of you I don't know, I'm Steve Shepard, and I'm speaking on behalf of my wife, Lynn Povich, as well as myself. Many of you here today had the good fortune to have known Bert for many, many years, even decades. By contrast, I'm a Johnny-come-lately. I was in my 60s and Bert a few years older when we met as the trailing spouses of Letty and Lynn, who had known each other since the early days of second-wave feminism. They are very close friends. There's something to be said for the late-in-life friendship that Bert and I developed. It wasn't based on a shared profession, he a lawyer, I a journalist, or that we had children at the same school, too late for that. Instead, we found that we liked each other, we enjoyed each other. We traveled as a foursome, had countless dinners, took long walks. I loved his sense of humor, his insight into politics, his carefully considered views on most everything, the sort of thing that we sometimes call wisdom. About a decade ago, when I was about to retire, Lynn worried that I wouldn't know what to do with all my spare time, sitting in my room at home. Why not start a book group, she suggested. Good idea. I immediately thought of Bert as co-conspirator, and I broached the subject to him over lunch. Good idea, he agreed. We had some friends in common that we can invite to join us. For example, Victor Navasky, Jack Rosenthal, and Martin Sage. Bert brought in a couple of friends I didn't know, Sam Norwich and Herb Teitelbaum. I did the same, suggesting Don Brown and Jack Willis. There we were, all men, all of a certain age, all well-educated, and at that point, all Jewish. And yet, from that homogeneous cohort came a wide diversity of views. The book group is now nearly 10 years old. We have read some 80 books that define the literary canon, from Hemingway to Faulkner, from Virginia Woolf to Jane Austen. Bert was a lively participant, weighing in with perceptive comments. I recall he didn't much care for Saul Bellows' Seize the Day, calling its protagonist, Tommy Wilhelm, an empty character. But he did enjoy Saul Bellows' Herzog, which he thought a masterpiece of ambivalence. Wonderful phrase. Gradually, the book group became something of a men's group. We got to know each other, partly because one man's view of a particular book often told us much about his personality. Or over dinner, we guys talked about many other things, and I don't mean just sports and politics. What could you do with a Giant fan when I was a Yankee fan? I don't know. As it happened, we had a book group session scheduled for last Monday, the very day Bert succumbed to his illness. We agreed to meet and share memories of our friend, but we fleetingly thought of postponing the discussion of the book at hand, which was The Human Stain by Philip Roth. No, we quickly decided better to proceed as planned in honor of our co-founder, Bert Pogrebin, as a kind of homage to him. Besides, we knew Bert would have vetoed any such postponement. From now on, when musing about a book, I'll always wonder, what would Bert think? Farewell, dear friend. Lynn and I will miss you greatly in so many ways.
I'm Kathleen Paratis. They thought I wasn't going to be able to be here. I know Bert as a hilarious friend, as a besotted husband of Letty, and as a singularly decent and respected labor lawyer. In the many decades I've been in the company of Bert and Letty, I've marveled at the complete lack of bad drama between them and the almost complete absence of day-to-day friction. This is abnormal. Neither of them could tell you how they did it. Letty heard Bert tell the same stories 1,000 times. I know that's an accurate number because I heard them 500 times. Was she a normal wife, muttering under her breath? Did she allow her thoughts to wander? Did she roll her eyes? No, she did not. She laughed, and so did I, because each telling was unique and still funny. He had signature verbal tics, such as, "that fucking guy." And in other words, when he said those things, Letty and I looked at each other, and I'm sure all of you did too, and laughed. One of the stories he delighted in telling was about me. I'm an employment lawyer on this side, on the good side, on the right side. He delighted telling this story about me that in the opinion of the lawyers in his firm, he said, Paratis cannot take yes for an answer. And every time he told the story, I laughed. In recent years, Bert did something not at all normal for an old communist and red diaper baby. He got a little religion. Every Friday night, he wanted to do Shabbat, often with the challah that I had made for them, many of which are still stuffed in that freezer. In these last months, as he regularly lost some physical ability or other, he never complained. He remained grateful for what he had and never groused about what he was losing. In these last months, something happened that was way out of the normal pattern for him and me. We started doing something together without Letty. He couldn't really read the newspaper anymore, and I took to reading to him regularly. And I didn't just read. It was a dramatic reading with footnotes and editorial comments and many interjections and diversions and a lot of laughing. But not only laughing, he was on top of what was going on with Trump and with Israel in particular. I told him, and I meant it, that he should have been on MSNBC. As recently as a few weeks ago, he gave me sage advice about a legal matter I was handling. I've noted that so much of Bert was just not normal, but this is because perfect harmony is not normal. It's a beautiful gift. And that's what Bert was to me, a beautiful gift.
think I represent a lot of intimate friends that we've shared through the years, so I speak on behalf of all of them. Bert. Bert. Well, there are many, many words that can describe Bert. Kind, passionate, fair, smart, funny, a cutie pie, a mensch, and the worst charade player that ever lived. But I learned a lot from him. When Phil and I married 43 years ago, we wanted a marriage just like the Pogies had. Solid, loving, equal, fun, sexy. They were our marriage mentors. And over a lifetime of weekend sleepovers at our house in Connecticut, or theirs in the Berkshires, or celebrating every New Year's Eve together for 40 years, year after year, they never let us down. They were a perfect pair, but they weren't perfectly matched. And understanding that was very important to this fiery Italian Lebanese girl and her laid-back Irish husband. One of those differences was the way they approached their faith. Letty, God bless her, I've always called her super Jewess. She studiously follows the traditions of the long, rich history of Judaism. And Bert was a little more relaxed about it all. We loved the story Bert told us about their honeymoon. It was December 1963, and there they were in Canil Bay in the Caribbean. So romantic, with the water lapping on the shore. Letty floated from the bath, gorgeous in her sexy negligee. She walked over to her bag and she pulled out a little teeny menorah. And little teeny birthday cake candles. And then she walked over to the mantle and proceeded to light the candles. As Bert watched her, he thought, oh my God, I've married a religious fanatic. Oh God, I love that. You know, I was feeling a little sentimental this week, as I'm sure many of you were. And I did something, you can try this at home. I booted up Google and I typed in the words Letty and Bert. No last names, just, I thought, well, I wonder what'll come up. And suddenly my screen exploded with hundreds of images. Letty and Bert at the beach. Letty and Bert dancing at a gala. Letty and Bert snuggling with their kids and their grandkids. There it all was. A full life lived. Letty and Bert. And I began to cry because I thought, not even Google can separate them. And neither will this. You'll always be the Pogies. God bless you, sweetheart.
I'm Sarah Kovner. This is Victor Kovner. I'll save him announcing himself. I look around this room and I see so many friends of Bert's from such diverse places. And I see friends of Letty's, and then I see friends of both of them. Not everyone was a friend of both of them. I see the friends of David and Abby and Dave, and of Robin, and of their grandchildren. And that was one of the great things about their life. It continues to be one of the great things about their life, that they encouraged and endorsed intergenerational friendships, which we so happily have shared. Letty has often said to me that I share my friends, which is true, but it's also true that Letty and Bert have shared their family with all of us. We even knew Esther, Bert's mother. Esther was the mayor. I think this is one of the few facts that hasn't come out today. She was the mayor of Roosevelt, New Jersey, named for you can imagine who. Bert could be considered a red diaper baby. Esther was the feistiest. She was very unlike, Bert was very unlike her in his personality. She was always ready for an argument, for a fight on a good cause, whereas he did it in a different way, as we know. We even knew Mark, Bert's brother, and Marcia, his sister. And I have to think that Esther's commitment and Esther's views and Esther's attitude helped create the kind of the feeling and the feeling of justice and equality. And those are words that everyone has used today about Bert, but they are really true. If everyone says it, it must be true. And it was. And maybe even led to the fact that it enabled him to marry a woman who was at least his equal. That wasn't so easy in those days. Victor and I have been friends of Letty and Bert and the family for 56 years, starting in Salt Air, continuing to this day on West 67th Street. And during all of those years, there has hardly been a week where we didn't see each other. And as they have migrated in recent years to Stockbridge, speaking together on the phone. And what did we talk about? This won't surprise you. We talked about politics. We talked about policy. We talked about all the things we cared about and the people we cared about. So all I can say is I have a big hole in my heart today, and I intend to fill it every day with memories, many memories of the wonderful times we had together. And I encourage you to do the same thing.
I'd like to start with a couple of additional words about Bert as a labor and employment attorney, not from the very moving perspective of Bert's partner, Bruce, but from the client perspective. And first I want to know, he taught not only at NYU, he did also teach at Yale Law School, and he co-authored a major treatise on labor law. I was very fortunate to encourage some of my clients and friends to engage Bert, and a number did. Each and every one of them was extremely grateful for the recommendation. Indeed, even after his retirement, his clients regretted his unavailability. As one said to me, Bert would have settled this painful dispute in a day. Bert was not only superb, in my view, he was the best. Both inside and outside the law, Bert was known and loved for his incredible sense of humor. If you were never the subject of a roast by him, you have not truly lived. Never cruel, never deprecating, but able to find joy in the foibles and frailties that mark us all. When Sarah and I were honored many years ago for the fight against Trump City, he hilariously focused on Sarah's insistence that our guests at Fire Island save their napkins for the entire visit. Of course, only one of 100 environmentally sound steps to be followed in our home. Sarah and I were in Stockbridge for a final visit last week. Bert did not have much time awake at that point, but when we could see him, I began with a recollection of our time on the softball field in Saltaire, playing for a team called the Men. Softball was not yet integrated in Saltaire. We all had T-shirts, on the front of which said the Men. On the back, it said World Champions 1973. I asked Bert if he remembered the one home run I'd hit in my almost 20 years of softball, recalling that as I circled the bases, it seemed that my feet never touched the ground. He paused. Letty and Sarah and I waited for a response, if any. At last, in his then very low, even guttural voice, came his comment, "I don't believe Victor ever hit a home run." He set the highest marks for so many, as a father, as a grandfather, as a brother, but most of all, as a husband. It's been said often today, but not enough. May his memory be a blessing.
You have asked me why the days fly by so quickly, and why each one feels no different from the last. And you say that you are fearful for the future, and you have grown suspicious of the past, and you wonder if the dreams that we share together have abandoned us, or we abandoned them. And you cast about and try to find new meaning, so that you can feel that closeness once again. So carry on, my sweet survivor, carry on, my lonely friend. Don't give up your dream, don't you let it end. Carry on, my sweet survivor, you've carried so long, so it may come again. Carry on. You remember when you felt each person mattered, and that we all had to care or all was lost. But now you see believers turn to cynics, and you wonder, was the struggle worth the cost? And then you see someone too young to know the difference, and the veil of isolation in their eyes. And inside, you know, you've got to leave them something, or the hope for something better slowly dies. So carry on, my sweet survivors, carry on, my lonely friends. Don't give up our dream, don't you let it end. Carry on, my sweet survivors, you've carried it so long, so it may come again. Carry on. With Bert in our hearts, with Letty in our hearts, with the twins in our hearts, with their kids in our hearts, with David. We shall carry on, we shall carry on, because we know it will come again, so we carry on.
We'll carry on with the grandchildren, Ethan, Benjamin, Maya, Mali, Zev, and Arlo.
The air was cold on my grandpa's last day, and the sky was clarion blue, and the ground from the frosted Berkshire hilltops clear down to New York City stretched with the fine gestures of spring. And what now, after the smell of tennis balls in the Fire Island shed, after planting flowers down in the garden, wearing pants in the summer heat for the ticks, after symphony evenings and him being so impressed because I, age 9, knew the conductor and he didn't. Speak what go before me gathered here today, tearful remembrancing, honoring, consoling. Grandpa, I go heavily in your clothes. In line, in blessed link by God and family, awakened in that dark candled bedside, your face awash, blanketed beyond. Who came before us tall and stooping, vessel for our projections, container, outline, and thereby a blossoming forth. My grandpa gave me the great South Bay. I sat in a wagon, rust and sand, and he beside me on the warm concrete of Bay Prom, seagull cries, the drone of a plane overhead, and just the way he said it, Great South Bay, like that mellow expanse of water, was his proud and private gift to me alone. I wear his clothes. People say we're built alike. I didn't understand him, not really, but when we made eye contact across a noisy table, for some reason we always laughed, celebrating some secret joke neither one of us got. The adventure is only as good as the home you have to come back to. Your belly round and taut with hearth, for it is a mitzvah to safen the brood. Amen, self-abrogating man. With the briefcase and the hat, you did not talk of the past. You worried about us. I never knew you to go out with other men. I never knew you to be by yourself. And yet, on some Mineola reverse commute, On a city corner at night, perhaps indeed you stopped, awash in the altogether personal, that secret castle of mind in which now you dwell alone, where all that you cradled and supported and loved cannot follow. Rest easy, old soldier, veteran of courthouse, lake house, tennis court, and study. Rest, you soft-hearted champion of the fragile, whose hand upon grandma's back gently kept her pedaling high, who did not like it when we older boys played rough with the littler ones, who kept watch from the dock, eyes unaccountably, unnervingly sharp, as we capsized and righted and capsized some poor beleaguered sunfish. May the horns play Guthrie and Mingus and Bach on your ride through the intermediate beyond. This world loves you, Grandpa. Bert Pogrebin. I'll be glad when I see you again.
A moment. Thank you. I'm Ben, by the way. Nice to see you all. Thanks for coming. There is a Pogrebin way, a distinct, often unspoken framework for moving through the world. Perhaps it came over the Atlantic Ocean with Grandpa's mother, Esther, but if you ask me, Bert wrote the book on the Pogrebin way. It is hard to verbalize, but glaringly obvious when you see it. It is there in my mother's dinner time performances of Fiddler on the Roof. It's there in Robin's aura of safety as she makes her home feel as reassuring and comfortable as my own. It's there in David's comedic timing, and it's there in his smile as he watches us roar with laughter. It's there in Ethan's unwavering commitment to family, his impassioned loyalty. It's there in Molly's raw intelligence and work ethic. It's there in Maya's confidence and enviable certainty. It's there in Zev's curiosity of what lies beyond our New York bubble and his determination to return when it matters. It's there in Arlo's even keel, his groundedness in the face of the chaotic whirlwind that is our family. And of course, it's there in Letty, the woman who co-authored this unwritten book. It is not possible to list the ways in which Bert manifests himself in Letty, for they were and are one and the same. I'm not cocky enough to assume that it's there in me too, but I hope those of you in this room notice something, a mannerism or a phrase, that proves that I too am a product of the man we mourn today. We Pogrebins are proud extensions of Bert, moving through life in what we can only hope is in his image. We follow in his footsteps, and though the marks of his soles have disappeared, the path remains clear. I love you forever, Grandpa. Thank you for everything.
I'm an iPad kid. Okay. My grandpa always remembered everything. Even though he had 3 children and 6 grandchildren, a busy wife, a million friends, a robust career, he was somehow always caught up. Throughout every stage of my life, he somehow always knew what mattered to me. He knew when I had a big swim meet coming up, when I was going on a school trip to Washington, D.C., when I was rehearsing for a play, and more recently, when I had a big review coming up at work, when I was reeling from a breakup, when I was traveling somewhere new. So today, to honor my grandpa, I want to remember everything too. I want to remember his gentle but booming voice and the way it felt to hold his very soft hands, and how he would pinch our cheeks until they turned red when he came in to say goodnight, and how whenever he heard us singing, which was often, he would pretend to be a conductor, and he would lead us like we were a big grand symphony. And how, as soon as we would arrive to visit him in the Berkshires, he made sure to remind us all the boats he had on the lake and encouraged us to go out in them. But then he never stopped watching from the shoreline to make sure we were safe and got back in one piece. And I remember the way it felt to wrap my arms around his waist and rest my cheek on his big belly. And I remember on hikes when he would sing, left, 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 right, left. And I remember how it felt when he would tug on my arm when we danced and he was leading. And I remember how he looked at Grandma when they were dancing or eating or walking, and how she looked back at him. And I remember the last time we talked, when he told me that I was very lovable, and he loved the soup that I made the night before. And I will always remember his infectious smile that filled his whole face, and how he modeled kindness and selflessness and loyalty in everything he did. And just like he protected us all those years, watching from the shoreline as we splashed and were free, I will remember and honor his legacy by protecting my cousins and my mom, my aunts and my uncles. And I will wrap Grandma up with love and kisses and always make sure she's okay. And I will always remember you, Grandpa, and I will miss you every day. I love you.
My grandma often feared that my memories of my vibrant grandpa would be replaced by snapshots of him in his old age. She wanted to make sure that I would hold on to the mornings we spent in a canoe on the Stockbridge Bowl, the nights when he laid with me when my parents were out of town and I could not fall asleep, the memories of his matzah tie at Passover, his low voice singing "This land is your land," his office covered with court transcripts that he wouldn't let me organize because he insisted he knew exactly where everything was. I will remember each of these Bertisms, but my grandma was wrong that they'd be tainted by the past few years. Quite the opposite. I had never felt closer to my grandpa than I did when he died. Since the time I started law school, he was more invested and supportive than anyone else. He knew my courses, my professors, my papers, and my in-class blunders. When I told him that professor chided me in front of my classmates, he told me it was probably my fault because I raised my hand too much. When I sent him the brief that I had already turned in, he recommended I revise to make it less repetitive. He was right. My grandpa was the first to call and say congratulations after exams were finished or a summer internship secured. It was like he had a mental calendar of every mini milestone. I got to know my grandpa better through those frequent phone calls. He would share pieces of his life that he had previously withheld. He told me about representing a conscientious objector before the Sixth Circuit, working as the lawyer for the Village Voice and the Amsterdam News, teaching labor law classes at NYU and Yale, and co-founding the Appleseed Foundation with luminaries like civil procedure scholar Arthur Miller. Even in my grandpa's own stories, he was not the main character. It goes to who he was, the rare kind of man who stood behind his women. I'm lucky to have been one of them. I will miss those calls on my walk to class. One of their defining features was that they had no ending. My grandpa would hang up when he was mid-sentence without saying goodbye. I would always laugh, knowing he probably misplaced his phone or had signed off in his head. But this meant I often didn't get to say I love you. Grandpa, I hope you knew how much.
In my final conversation with Grandpa, I was asking him about his career. I asked what paths he might have chosen if he hadn't decided to practice law. He answered that he would have liked to have been a journalist. As I reflect, I found that Bert's journalistic traits, curiosity, integrity, and his deep ability as a listener sat at the center of what made him so special to me. He engaged with legitimate interests when I was young, shy, and had passions outside of his wheelhouse. He recalled and understood the details of my life in a way that demonstrated how much he cared about me and championed me. He acted this way towards everybody. His ability to connect with people endeared us all to him and enabled his hallmark sense of humor. I look up to my grandfather so much. His empathy, affection, and sensitivity for those around him made an impression on me. His devotion to and support of my grandmother was my first and strongest image of how one acts in a loving relationship. His unwavering moral compass challenges me to try to be a better person. I now realize how many of my values ultimately stemmed from his example. I love him so much and will miss his presence deeply.
Hello, everybody. Fair warning, I'm not the writer of the family. My grandfather was truly a model man. His romance with my grandmother was a 60-year epic. His professional achievements, too many to number. To me, what he was a grandfather. His presence was always calm and comforting. His eyes were always smiling. He always made me laugh. Grandpa, I love you and I will miss you a lot. To me, when I remember him and I think about what I want to take from him and from his life, is really the standard he set for all of us as people. And when I think about what he gave to all of us, I think about that standard and about how our world can use more people like Bert. In closing, on behalf of our family, I want to thank all of you so much for being here and for remembering my grandfather. Thank you.
Letty, Abby, Robin, David, Mark and Marcia, Ethan, Benjamin, Maya, Molly, Zev, and Arlo. You're quite the clan. Letty shared with me the other day that when Bert turned 65, he said he could die now. He had everything he wanted and needed, save the state of the world. And he felt lucky. Some would say blessed. Pirkei Avot teaches, Ben Zoma asked the question, Ezehu Ashir, who is rich? And the answer that's given is Hasamech Bechelko, the one who is happy with his lot. I know Bert wasn't a religious person. We didn't see him much in this sanctuary. But he lived a holy life, filled with gratitude and joy, faithful to a moral compass and a vision of a world of justice and dignity. He had such plenty that he had an uncanny ability to tap into each and every person's emotions and connect and really, really be present. He was an anchor for all of you. And he loved that Phil Oak song that we opened with, When I'm Gone, which said, there's no place in this world where I'll belong when I'm gone, and I won't know the right from wrong when I'm gone, and you won't find me singing on this song when I'm gone, so I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. No doubt Bert Pogrebin did it while he was here. He knew right from wrong, and he pretty much thought he was right most of the time. He felt the extraordinary blessing of the flow of time. He loved abundantly. He felt the golden sun. He danced with delight. He sang louder than the guns, and he always chanted when he hiked. He added his name to the fight for justice. He lived in the shtetl of the Upper West Side. He loved Fire Island and made a home in the Berkshires. But he was the address, the place that people would go if they had a problem. He worried, he protected, he was mad for his kids and a lunatic for his grandkids. He kept track of every single detail of what every member of his family was up to. He was the person that made you secure. He was positive. He loved to laugh and have fun. He was enchanted with life. You all, I'm sure everyone here, but particularly you all, made his life enchanted. Letty, his love of 60 years, his children, his grandchildren, his friends, you made him sameach bechelko, happy with his lot. And it is true, he won't be singing his song now that he is gone. But there is no doubt I disagree with Phil Oakes. There is no doubt that there is a place where he belongs. He is in you. You learned so much from him. He had unbounded love for you. He asked you great questions like, what do you really think? He taught you to advocate for yourself. He was your greatest champion. He will forever belong with you. You will forever sing his song, but most importantly, he would want you to live life while you are here, even when he is gone, and to live a rich life. Ezehu hashir hasameach bechelko. Who is rich? The person who is happy with his or her or their lot. May we all have the blessing of living a life of dayenu, of enough, of gratitude, of plenty, of being happy with our lot, and know that Bert Pogrebin was the one who taught us how. Yehi zichrono levracha, may his memory be for abundant blessing. After the service, their family will sit Shiva through the doors here in the Rabbi Rachel Cowan Chapel. There are many of us here, and so we just ask you to pace yourself. Some may want to leave, come back to offer their condolences. They will be here from 1 to 4 this afternoon. It's already well past 1. Tomorrow, Shiva will be at Central Synagogue's Pavilion on East 55th Street and Lexington Avenue from 3 to 5. You enter on 55th Street and walk downstairs to the event. I'll ask you to please rise for El Malei Rachamim.
אל מרחמים שוכן במרומים המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת בנימין בן אסתר ואברהם שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן תהם מנוחתו אנא בעל הרחמים הסתירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו אדוני הוא נחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר Amen.
Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Bert Pogrebin, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. I'll ask you now to get the Sidurim underneath the seats if you'd like to join in Mourner's Kaddish on page 58. Page 58. Yitgadal v'yikadash shemei Rabba v'yamad divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yamechon uv'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael ba'agala u'bizman kariv v'yamru amen Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach le'olam olmei olmaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei l'kudesha brichu Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiran be'ama v'yamru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shamaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen. Oseh shalom b'mroma, huya aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'yamru amen. It's traditional, actually, after a burial, that there are two lines formed to leave the grave as a sign of support and offering of condolences, and to say to the family and all of those who are bereaved, we're here with you. We're going to walk the walk with you. We will be of support. And I know I extend my condolences to all of you on behalf of Rabbi Roli Matalan, who couldn't be here today, our community, Central Synagogue, all those who love you and really care about being with you in this walk, and will extend the traditional words of condolence. Hamakom yenachem etchem b'toch sha'arav le'tzion v'Yerushalayim. May God comfort you together with all the other mourners of Zion and Yerushalayim. I'll ask everyone to remain standing as the family leaves and makes their way to the chapel for the Shiv'ah. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
I've traveled around this country, from shore to shining shore. It really made me wonder the things I heard and saw. I saw the weary farmer a-plowing sod and loam. I heard the auction hammer just a-knocking down his home. But the banks are made of marble, with a guard at every door, and the bolts are stuffed with silver that the farmer sweated for. I've seen the seamen standing idly by the shore, and I heard their bosses saying, got no work for you no more. But the banks are made of marble, with a guard at every door, and the bolts are stuffed with silver that the seamen sweated for. I've seen the weary miner scrubbing coal dust from his back, and I've heard his children crying, got no coal to heat the shack. But the banks are made of marble, with a guard at every door, and the bolts are stuffed with silver that the miner sweated for. brothers working throughout this mighty land. I've prayed we'd get together and together make a stand. Then we might own those banks of marble with a guard at every door, and we would share those vaults of silver that we have sweated for.